Yeah, look, we started the show off by saying people want low gas prices, low taxes, good education for their kids. It's a pretty simple list. But they also want a sense of fairness, right? And I think there's two dangers here. See if you agree with me. Number one, having an opposition party in America is really important, right? Think Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. It's some of the best times in America. Think Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich. And we don't have that right now. The Democratic Party isn't a functional party. And number two, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said they're fundamentally out of touch. If I decided to protest something I didn't like that my boss was doing by not showing up for work, I wouldn't have a job the next day. By the way, most of America wouldn't have the job the next day. I don't understand Democrats thinking it's good politics to say the rules shouldn't apply to federal employees just because they don't like Donald Trump.
Yeah, and you know, Leland, if you look at this objectively, there are very few Democrats in elected office, certainly in Washington, that have any private sector experience, especially business experience. Republicans tend to have more. It's just the way the parties have always been aligned. So as a result, absent anybody in the party, especially in leadership positions, that understand that while the government is not a business, it must be run as a provider and delivery entity for services, in some cases product and defense. And government doesn't do it well because the incentive structure isn't there. People are not compensated the same. If you fail, you don't necessarily get fired. If you don't show up for work, you don't necessarily get fired. But we should also celebrate the public servants all around the country that toil day in and day out to keep us safe and keep the country running. It's not their fault. But
No,
you're right,
that's fair.
Democrats have to start waking up to the fact that management and leadership have to have at least a view of the private sector and those skills that we right now, I think, have none of. On the other hand, the Republican Party right now is taking this a little bit too far. Elon Musk, the most extraordinary entrepreneur in human history. Nobody understands how to generate efficiencies better than he does. But he's also got some real issues that I think many of us would agree with. And I just wish that there'd be a thoughtful center party, if you will, that could triangulate this notion, improve the government, cut out the waste, but start managing government both in the state level and federal level in an efficient manner. We're the best country in the world. We know how to do this, but we're not electing people that have that experience, Leland.
I was going to say, if you keep coming on the show, which we hope you do, and keep saying things like this, the Democratic Party is going to send you like an excommunication letter. Coming up here.
I think I got that. I got that letter last year, I think.
Yeah, when you announced running for president against Joe Biden. But I want to, speaking of Joe Biden, Democrats now are saying and are fighting Donald Trump in the courts and saying that if he doesn't listen to every court action, if it's a federal district court that says the CDC must put gender-affirming care documents up and they don't, then somehow this is the constitutional crisis. Joe Biden talked about that as he was leaving office. Here you go.
Right.
Early in my term, I announced a major plan to provide millions of working families with debt relief for their college student debt. Tens of millions of people in debt were literally about to be canceled, their debts. But my MAGA Republican friends in the Congress, elected officials and special interests stepped in and sued us, and the Supreme Court blocked it and blocked it. But that didn't stop me. I announced we were going to pursue alternative paths.
Okay, if that's not a constitutional crisis, I don't know what is. But I said in the tease, the one thing Democrats could do to fix this and won't. Have you heard any consideration of simply just saying, hey, we're sorry, we need to rethink this?
I've not heard that. And by the way, I don't think we're in a constitutional crisis right now, Leland. I do think if Donald Trump and his administration fails to abide by the rulings of our judiciary, then yes, we are in a crisis. And by the way, I hope every American, I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican in office, if we don't abide by the ruling of our courts, then we are at risk of losing democracy. But you also can't reform the federal government by doing it the old-fashioned way, by shaking hands and passing legislation. You know, it is too monstrous, and I think there's some truth to this as well. We can't get into a constitutional crisis. And the reality is, I think Democrats are crying wolf a little bit too much right now, and instead should be spending time and energy listening to people, preparing for next time. Because, Leland, as obnoxious as some of the efforts are right now on both sides, the fact of the matter is these are the same Democrats that said Joe Biden was just fine and covered it up and precluded a real competition to offer a candidate who I believe could have won, a centrist, business-minded, reasonable, common-sense candidate. These are the same people. So
I
love a
remember
lot
you.
of them, but I got to tell you, I'm pretty disappointed.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.